I hope you're all well. Welcome to the Scoop from a School Librarian webinar. This is part of our School and Public Library Partnerships series this fall. My name is Beth Yates, and I'm the Children's Consultant from the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I'll be your host and your question moderator today. And our speaker today is Robyn Young. She is the school librarian at Avon High School, as well as being the current past president of the Indiana Library Federation. And we are really thrilled to have her here today. I think she's going to provide us with some really great insight into what school librarians do and how we can connect. But before we jump into the content of this webinar, I do have a few announcements from the State Library. First of all, to register for other webinars available from the Professional Development Office and our partners, including the two other School and Public Library Partnerships series webinars that I have planned for this fall, please visit the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library. For a full list of our current in-person training topics, please see the continuing education page of our website. Today's webinar will be archived and will be available to access and share on the Indiana State Library's archived training page within 30 days. The Indiana State Library has many ways we try to stay connected to library staff throughout the state. For weekly updates on upcoming trainings and to learn more about what's happening in libraries across the state, please subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter, The Wednesday Word. We also offer a blog which provides information about the Indiana State Collection, features interview spotlights on library staff from across the state, and is a good source for information about upcoming events at the Indiana State Library. Now on to technical issues. If at any point during the webinar you experience any sound issues, please see the sound issues box just below the chat box on the left side of the screen. If there's a global sound issue, meaning others are experiencing the issue also, we'll announce it in the chat box just like we did a couple of minutes ago. If you are unable to resolve the sound issues you're experiencing, please be reassured that we are recording the meeting and you can watch it offline after the meeting has ended. Again, if there is a global sound issue, we will make an announcement in the chat box. At this time, we are not any longer experiencing global sound issues. If you have a question for our presenter during this webinar, just type it in that chat box on the upper left-hand side of your screen. I'll be watching and will get your question to Robyn as soon as there is a good opportunity. There should also be time near the end for questions. But Robyn did say she'd love for this to be a dialogue, so please, as you have questions, go ahead and type them and I'll do my best to get them to her in a timely manner. Now, the last thing, on to LEUs. This session is 1 hour, so you'll get 1 LEU for today. We have a new procedure for webinar LEUs. Today, to get your LEU certificate, you'll need to remain on the webinar until the very end, and there will be an opportunity for you to download a Word document that you can actually type your name directly into. Again, you should remain on the webinar until the very end, and you'll receive your LEU then. I will not be sending out certificates as we've done in the past, although if you have any trouble accessing it, feel free to email me directly, and I'll put my email address in at the end for you if you need it. Okay, that is all I have. So now finally, without further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Robyn.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with everyone today, and we're going to be talking about what a school librarian does, how we can collaborate with one another and form partnerships, and how specifically the public libraries can help or work with the school librarians. So, and again, as Beth said, please feel free to ask questions throughout. I love the dialogue, so that would be great. So a little bit about me, just real quickly. I started as an English and social studies teacher, and I did English and social studies for 10 years before I went back and got my MLS from Indiana University. Then I've been in the library at Avon High School for the last 17 years. The school that I'm at has 3,100 students and is in a suburban area. We're a suburb of Indianapolis. So that's kind of our location where we're at. I have about 150 faculty members, another 100 staff members on top of that. So we are a rather large high school. We're the 10th largest high school in Indiana. So there's always a lot to do, so that's good. We're going to start with, what does a school librarian do all day? And you notice in this picture that I have here that there's not a library in sight. And I put that for a specific reason. School librarians think of ourselves rather differently than a standard, a public or an academic librarian. And that is that we think of ourselves as teachers first and foremost. So the reason that I have this picture on here is that about 2 weeks ago, one of the things that all the teachers do is that we take the junior students on a junior day of caring, and we go into the community and we do community service. And so this is just a really great opportunity to meet students in a different way, work with them in different ways. And that's one of the things that I just love doing every year. Sometimes it includes, being a school librarian includes supervising basketball games or football games, or being in the hallways on duty, making sure that students are behaving properly. And there's just a lot of different things that we do that would be different than a public library I would imagine. So we're going to talk about that, about what a school librarian does all day. Depending upon your school, I'm going to address my school, but I'm also going to talk about schools in general as well, obviously, to hopefully help you in whatever situation that you're in. So one of the main things that we do is that classes come into the library for direct instruction. And I had this happens every day in my school. So, but an example of something that's happened this week is that I had a teacher who came into the library, and we're working together. It's a freshman class. We're working together on the I guess information literacy skills. So sorry. It's a little disconcerting to me not to have like people in front of me. So the direct instruction for information literacy skills. So our students come in, I've created a survey for them to take where they provide a little information for me about their reading habits and how often they read each day and what genres they like. And then I provide direct instruction for them on a variety of things. Sometimes it's how to use databases, citation use, we did a fun one, how to write emails, because the kids have no idea how to write emails. That was our last one. Yeah, and the teachers have said that they've already had a huge improvement in that area. Mm-hmm. So we do direct instruction all the time. The classes will come in, depending upon what the subject is, we'll talk with the teachers beforehand, and we'll instruct the students. Today, I actually was out of the library and went to a classroom where I was teaching students how to research. And so we took the topic of Indiana basketball, which is very near and dear to most Hoosiers. And we learned about how to research the history of Indiana basketball. And we went through accessing their prior knowledge and determining what keywords we would use if we did a general Google search. Then we did website evaluation, where we were looking at the different websites that came up on our Google search and which ones were appropriate to use and reliable, and which ones were not appropriate or reliable to use. And so I'm not always in the library. There are a lot of times where I am out in the classroom working with the students, because we are a one-to-one school, meaning all of our students do have laptops. And so that makes it so that I find that I often go into their classrooms. It may be direct instruction on some sort of technological use. So we've got students right now that are doing movie trailers as part of their English classes. And so I'm instructing them on how to use the camera and set up their shots. And we have a green screen in the library that they're using. And we set up projectors so that they could project and act like they were on the news and different backgrounds. And so just a wide variety of direct instruction that we do on a daily basis. We also, as part of that, have to collaborate with our teachers. So when a class comes in, it's not just an on-the-fly type of thing where they're coming in and we're going, oh, what are you learning about? There's a lot of planning that has to go ahead of that. And so that's where we collaborate with teachers extensively. And that might be meeting before school, after school, during lunches. Sometimes it's chatting in the hallways, just trying to figure out what it is that we're going to be doing with our students. One of the new things that I've been doing with our classes are what are called breakouts, and many of you may be familiar with that. There's a movement called Breakout EDU, similar to our escape rooms that have become real popular around the country. These are focused on specific curriculum that we want to teach them, and so to break out, they have to have knowledge of the curriculum and learn content in order to break out or unlock the boxes that we have available for them. So that takes extensive collaboration with our teachers and requires a lot of work before the kids come in and actually do the breakout. We also have situations where I was working with a U.S. history, what's called a professional learning community. So all of our teachers get together and meet who teach the same content area. And I go to those meetings just to listen, and usually I'll find some way that the library can enhance what they're doing. So last week's meeting, they were trying to get their students to increase their reading comprehension. And we all know that in order to increase your reading comprehension, you get them to read. And that's the best way to do that, is to practice. But our history teachers weren't aware of that information. And so what I'm going to do with those students is create kind of a webinar, kind of what we're doing now. They're going to get information from me on a reading analysis and how to go about reading appropriately, reading for meaning, questions that you would ask. All of our junior U.S. history students will be shown. It'll be a YouTube video or something, is the way I usually do it. But I'll help them with that reading analysis. And that wouldn't have happened without me being in that meeting. So it's really important for that library space to be staffed in some way so that I can go to the meetings and work on collaborating with our teachers. Another thing that we do is help teachers understand their digital resources that are available to them. And that might be from databases, and public libraries have a lot better databases than school libraries do. They're usually, you have better funding. So often.
Plus, we have the Indiana State Library sponsored Inspire, of course. I have to plug.
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up because we do use that a lot.
Good.
And so helping those teachers understand that we're not Googling everything, that sometimes there are better places to do research, and teaching the teachers how to use those digital resources is really important. Because I can't get into every classroom, obviously, with just one of me and all of those students. So teaching the teachers how to use those digital resources and how to teach those to their students is a really important thing. That Indiana basketball research that I was doing is interesting because I came here today to do that research, but I'd already co-taught it with the teacher several times today, and so she's teaching and finishing out the day on her own because she feels comfortable with that. And now she's got the skills needed to be able to help her students understand those digital resources. It could also be things like apps. I pulled together a bunch of apps for that movie project that kids could record video on their phones and do some editing on their phones. Or just a wide number of digital resources. Anything that's out there, they rely on me to explain or teach them, or if I find a new website or a new app that would be really good for their classes, I share that with our teachers. Then, of course, we just have classes in to use the library space. So there are sometimes, with so many students in our classes, we have on average about 30 students per classroom. And with classes needing to move around and do different activities, sometimes just coming into the library space is really nice. I've been really blessed with having a large skylight in our library. It's a very open, very welcoming environment. The kids love just going in there to be there. So sometimes the classes just come in to use the library space. Yesterday, I think I had 4 classes in there at one time. It was very crowded. A lot of students in, but it's great that they have that space just to kind of get a change of pace, not always be in the same classroom that's there. We are also open during lunches and between classes. So students will have that time where they may not want to go to a crowded cafeteria, but they want to come check their email, print out a paper, do a little homework, and they want a quieter, more of a study environment. And they do come in and do that during lunches, grab a quick book between classes. So we're always busy. There are a lot of days that we want to stay open during lunch for our students, which means we often don't take a lunch ourselves or we eat it at our desk. That was what happened today for me and tomorrow. So
I have a question. This is from me, not from that. So when you mentioned getting out, being able to get out of your library to go to meetings and do other things, so who's working in your library?
Great question. So I am lucky that I have a part-time assistant. Now, I did start, like I said, 17 years ago, and at that time I had 2 full-time assistants and 2 librarians in the building. We have changed dramatically with the financial climate and the changes in education. But I am lucky enough still that I have 1 part-time assistant that works with me. I have had to close the library on quite a few occasions. If I'm in a classroom and I've been working with that teacher on an assignment, then I'm going to go in with that teacher and we're going to close the library. The sad thing is that then the library is closed to all of those other 33,000 students, and they don't have access to the library because I'm in a classroom teaching. And that is, of course, one of the challenges that school librarians face. I said I'm lucky to have 1 part-time assistant. Many schools don't have that at all. And many schools don't have a certified school librarian at all. And so that is a change, and we'll be talking about that in just a little bit.
Do you have any students who work in your library too? When I was in high school, I was a media aide during my study hall.
You know, I tell my student assistants that I could not run the library without them.
Yeah.
My student assistants will keep track of all of the students who come in and out with passes and ID cards and make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then they're also the ones that check the books in and out for me, and they shelve the books as well. Yeah. So if I didn't have them, I would be stuck behind the desk checking books in and out and shelving books and doing nothing else. Right, exactly. So it is very important that I have those student assistants as well, because they make it so I can do everything else.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for the questions. Like I said, if anybody has questions, please continue, because I love the interaction. I will add one more thing, and this is just kind of a silly thing. I have a library advisory committee, and my library advisory committee is made up of students, staff, and parents. And one of the things that they determined last year for me was that they said, gosh, wouldn't it be really cool if you could serve like coffee or hot chocolate in the library? And I was like, well, I don't know, like that could be cool. I'll have to find out about it. And so I did a little searching and ended up buying a Keurig. And with that Keurig, we've been able to offer coffee and hot chocolate and some cappuccinos too. They love the French vanilla cappuccinos, let me tell you. What's been interesting about this is that the first week I did it, I had kids coming in saying, you know, this is just so nice. The library is such a nice place. It's so cozy. And I said, just because we're serving coffee? And they're like, yeah, that's it. Like, it's so cozy now. And what I've seen is that I've developed a different relationship with students, with your patrons, because they are coming in for a purpose, but they're finding out that the library is a pretty cool place to be. And so now the teachers, when they come in for either that instruction or to use the library space, they're telling students, hey, you can get coffees or hot chocolates or cappuccinos, and you're welcome to use them, you know, drink them while you're studying. And that has just been a really nice thing. And they always thank me. Thank you so much for having this coffee. Thank you so much for the hot chocolate. And I think it's really interesting because, of course, I'm making some extra money for myself in the library, not for myself, for the library, for the students. But what I've also done is I have gone to whatever money we make, the students determine how it's being spent. So I provide them with some opportunities. We are in need of comfortable seating areas. We were primarily a library that just had a bunch of tables and chairs. And we're really switching over to that comfortable seating, as I know that the public libraries have done years ago, which is really wonderful. Well, we didn't have a lot of comfortable seating, and we've already bought some tables and some chairs and some seat covers for some old chairs that were ripped with that funding. And so when the students got to pick, I'm like, okay, do you want this cafe table or this comfortable chair? And they would pick and choose, and then I would order what they recommended, because of course I want them to use the facilities, so I let them have a say in what it is that we were purchasing.
We actually have 3 questions that have popped up.
Oh my goodness.
The first one, they just want to know, how much do you charge for drinks?
Oh, so I get most of my K-Cups on Amazon, or I look for good deals on them, but I determined that it costs me about 90 cents to $1 for an 8-ounce cup of coffee or hot chocolate. And so I charge $1.50. Oh. And my students, again, we're in a suburban area, so they often go to Starbucks before school, where it's $5 or $6.
Cheap for them,
then. And $1.50 is cheap for them. Now, I'm not making loads and loads of money. Don't get me wrong. I probably could have charged $2 and the kids would have been willing to pay that. I felt like I wanted to keep it as low as I could. But over the course of the past school year, like I said, I've been able to get some comfortable seating areas. But the most important thing to me is that the way their view of the library has changed. And that it's now a place to go and sit and hang out and get your homework done, and not necessarily just a place where your teacher makes you come check out books. And so I really like the way that has changed.
It's almost kind of, public libraries, they always say we strive to be the third place, like the place you want to go if you're not going home or school or work. And it's kind of like you're starting them off thinking of it in that way when they're still in school, and then maybe when they get older, come to the public library.
And one of the things, as a past president of the Indiana Library Federation, I've been lucky enough to go around the state and talk to people from all different types of libraries. And I've been able to see really how similar we are becoming to one another. And that the school library still has that teaching aspect of it that I know that not all public libraries do, although the academic libraries are very similar as well. But we are trying to make ourselves that destination, and that we want kids to come there. We want kids to enjoy the space. And we're really switching. We'll talk about that in our challenges, that we've really switched how we use things. It used to just be that classes would come in, I would teach them research instruction, and then they would leave, and that would be about it. And it's really, my role has definitely changed in the last 17 years.
So the other 2 questions, let me see if I can find. Oh, maybe they got rid of. Oh no, there it is. Okay. So the first one was, what type of training do you do with the students to ensure that they shelve correctly?
Oh, oh, that's always a good one, isn't it? We take each of our students and assign them different sections of the library. I do have a genre-fied library. Don't kill me. I know the controversies with that. I genre-fied a couple of years ago. I was dead set against it, but my library advisory committee thought that it was needed. And I told them that I would give it a try, and that if it didn't work, we would always go back to the old way. And the kids have loved it. They've absolutely loved the genrefying. And I don't get questions like, where are the scary books anymore? Where are the romance novels? Where are the mystery stories? Where are the sports books? I don't get any of that. I've only genrefied the fiction collection. Okay. But each one of my students will have an area for which they are responsible. And we've taught each of them as through the course, they're there every day. So we've taught each of them how it looks, what they do. We check it for them. Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of shelving? And that has worked really well for us. We also have a little chart where they sign off when they check their shelves. So they're responsible for also not only shelving that area, but checking that area to make sure that all of the books are in proper order and pulling out any that aren't in the correct order. And we've done that for a few years now, and that has just been really well received. The kids do a great job with it. It takes them 10 or 15 minutes a week to scan their shelves, and then shelve the books as well.
Okay. And then the other question that Catherine had, she had 2 of these questions, was how did you go about establishing the library advisory group? Is it a group of teens or students, or is it adults? Or
I put out a call. Actually, I have a call out right now to parents. We have a parent newsletter, and so in our parent newsletter, I put a little blurb out there about we've got a library advisory committee. If you want to be part of this, please let me know. I put it on our school announcements for our students, and we also have I'm trying to think, a classroom management system. There we go, where I can message all of the students. So that has gone out to the students, and then I send an email out to our teachers to see who wants to be involved with that as well. Last year I had about 15 people who were willing to be a part of that. We had 2 parents, I had 6 or 7 kids, and the rest were faculty members. I try and make sure that every department is represented. So I did go out and, if science, nobody responded that science department was, I go to our science department chair and say, hey, is there anybody who would be interested in being representative to the library advisory committee? And they helped me with everything from purchasing. They're also in place in case somebody challenges. There's a challenge in place regarding one of our books. Knock on wood, I haven't had those, but that is in place, and partly because we do have full procedures and policies in place for that. And again, they just provide me with ideas about what we could do in the library to make the library a more inviting space. I do appreciate with that library advisory committee that they understand some of our staffing woes, and they have tried to be advocates for us in terms of, hey, we use the library all the time, we love the library, what can we do to help you get additional staffing? And so they've actually mobilized some volunteers for me to come in on a regular basis, and they've just been really instrumental with that. And then, if we do something like coffee or hot chocolate, well, I didn't come up with the idea. It's not my library. Right. It's the library advisory committee. I talk with students about what they think that would be, and it's my patrons' library for me to make like they want it to be.
So the other, so we have a couple more questions. Someone wants to know, Deb, we will answer 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll keep going, okay? So somebody was wondering, would a public librarian ever fit on such a advisory group at a school? Like, would you ever consider having one of your public librarians?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm smacking myself right now because why didn't I do that? So yes, I will be contacting my local library to we have a teen librarian, and I need to get that teen librarian involved. And that was just, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. That is wonderful. Yes, absolutely. There's definitely a place. Just like vice versa, if you have a library advisory committee, there's always a place for your school librarian as well, and that would be wonderful if you would extend that invitation to them, because again, we'll talk later about our collaborations and partnerships, but that's a great way to do that.
Is there a chance that, or is this something, our advisory committee is something that a lot of schools have, a lot of high schools do for their libraries, or is it pretty unique to you guys?
Our Indiana evaluation rubric for our school librarians does put that there's a library advisory committee in there.
Great.
And I was lucky enough to be part of the development of that evaluation rubric for us. Our teachers all have evaluation rubrics, but because the nature of our job is slightly different than a classroom teacher, we did create a rubric specifically for school librarians that schools may choose to use. And so that is a part of that evaluation rubric. Right. So yeah.
Okay, let's forge ahead.
Okay, so I just like to share pictures because who doesn't love pictures of kids? So this was an activity that we did as part of our makerspace where our students made stress balls. And I will tell you, I also did this with our parents on back to school night, and the parents loved it as well. So I could definitely see that this would be a really great activity to do in any setting, any kind of library, because who's not stressed these days, right? This was a developmentally challenged class who was working on practicing their directions skills, reading different directions and following those. And so they were so excited to have those stress balls and make them. But also for the group of students, the stress balls, that touching of the rice that's in the balloon is really what it is. They love that feeling. So making those was it was a lot of fun. And something that could be easily taken to any library situation. And here's something we like directly stolen from public libraries, so thank you very much. And I always thought it was kind of funny because Legos I always thought of as being for elementary schools or maybe middle schools. But somebody said to try it in your high school, and oh my gosh, I'm picking up Legos all day long because they love the Legos. They love building and creating, and high school students don't often have the opportunity to do that. And so just providing that opportunity, again, providing that destination for them has been really a lot of fun. So they do like that. We have several other areas as well. We have, again, similar to public libraries, so you guys know all this already, but in school libraries, it's a relatively newer thing. We should have learned from you a long time ago is what we should have done.
Well, listen, some of us are still just getting on board too.
But we have a puzzle area. We have a coloring area with the adult coloring craze. We blow them up on our poster maker and do that kind of thing with the puzzling craze. We have electronics, so we have little bits and snap circuits, and we have those out for our students as well for them to just kind of play with. And then we just have a bunch of other stuff in our makerspace as well. 3D printing pens. We don't have a 3D printer. I haven't gotten the money for that. Maybe if we sell more coffee, I'll be able to do that. But and just even anything from duct tape to cardboard building structures. In our makerspace, we do try to put out a different activity every week, and then the kids can choose to do whatever that activity is. Sometimes it's button making. That was a fun one a couple weeks ago.
And I'm just going to add a comment that I would encourage public libraries to reach out to their schools and find out what they're doing by way of makerspaces, because that's a potential collaboration or partnership.
Absolutely.
Right there.
Absolutely. Definitely.
To work together on it.
Even activities, and we'll talk about programming in a little bit, but even creating those activities with all of those other things that we're doing, it becomes hard to do that aspect of it, to put the makerspace activities together. But you may have better ideas than school librarians would on how we could put things into place. Well, there's more. If you thought we were done, there's a little bit more, because I was just trying to cover the basics. But book talks we do. I know you do that individually with patrons, or you might do that with a group of children.
We like to go into schools and do it too.
And go into schools, and we always need it because I'm always struggling trying to figure out what I'm going to say. Next Friday, I've got 150 kids coming in at different times of the day to do book talks, and I've got to make sure I have enough books for everybody on different subjects. So that's great. And just general book checkouts. You will have a lot of librarians who are on, especially at the elementary levels, who are on a fixed schedule, which means that the classes come in weekly, sometimes every 4 days, to check out library books. Their teachers leave them. It becomes a prep period for their teachers, and the librarian is solely responsible for those kids for 45 minutes to an hour. And that's a different setup. They do a lot of book talks, they do different activities, they do book checkouts, but that would be something that we would love to have help with in terms of what do we do with those students if you're on a fixed schedule.
So if a public librarian wanted to get into a school and do book talks, do you have any recommendations for, I know it's different at every school.
So, sorry, we'll keep going. So, say that again.
Sorry.
I apologize. We had somebody come in, so it's okay.
So, book talks. Who would you recommend should they talk to the school librarian?
Talk to the school librarian.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So again, I'm just going to go through this next part relatively quickly, but we're going to curate resources. I have a website where I pull together all sorts of information for our student classes. We order all of the books and other materials that go into the library. This may include ebooks as well. Which I know that's one way that I partner with my public library. I process all the books. I do the creation of the makerspaces, which I talk about. And we also deal with technology, which I know a lot of you are dealing with as well, with troubleshooting or helping to print or anything like that. This is just a picture of my students doing one of those breakouts that I talked about, where we've got clues and information and they have to try and figure out how to break out or break into the box, I guess, as the case may be. And these were the little bits that I talked about with circuitry in the makerspace. So challenges that school librarians face with which we need help. This whole transition to a digital age with our students being one-on-one with their computers, and we are looking to try and figure out, well, if we don't have people coming to us for research anymore, what do we do? How do we get them into the library? So this is a great way that, my goodness, you know, the public libraries have been doing this for so long that we need help with even how to set up the library. Boy, that's one thing I'm really struggling with right now. I'm getting the furniture and the things that I want to have in place, but I'm just kind of throwing it every which way and not having a formal plan of what should this look like and what should my different spaces and areas be like. And I know that the public libraries have just done such a great job with that. So that is definitely the way public librarians could help with that situation. Our staffing is an issue. Since 2008 in Indiana, I can only speak to Indiana about this because I know some other states have requirements that every school have a school librarian. Indiana does not have that. But a majority of our school libraries are staffed with instructional assistants without any library training at all. And I do want to mention staffing for just a second because Beth and I were talking prior to this event that one of the things that school superintendents or schools will do is they will think, hey, I could go to the public library and just have the public library staff the school library. And that's a little bit of a slippery slope. School librarians think, oh, wait, why are they taking my job that I want to get back into? But then public librarians are like, hey, the kids don't have any help. There's somebody without training. We need to help them. So I totally get that dilemma there. But as you can see in what I've talked about already, we have a very different skill set when it comes to the instruction of students and that curricular instruction, that content area where, again, I think of myself as a teacher first and a librarian second. That's a very different thing. So I'm just going to mention that. I'm not saying one way to do it or not to do it, but it is something that we have to keep in mind in terms of the staffing, that I'm not sure that the answer is just for public libraries to go in to take over schools, and I don't think that's a thought, but that we need to find a happy medium, and maybe that is instructing our principals and our superintendents and our school leaders and our school board on what a school librarian does. That would be very helpful in being an advocate for school libraries.
Someone wants to know if it would step on toes to help with some basic training for aides, like giving them training in readers advisory and things like that. If public librarians
did that, would it? So, boy, that's a tough question. So your question was, would it step on toes? Yeah. And it would a little bit. It would step on toes. That is one thing that in my school district, I know I struggle with a little bit because we do have instructional assistants in those positions. Schools have a definite hierarchy in the way the schools work. And so a principal will be actually in charge of the library. So there's a principal in charge of me. I run the library, but that principal ultimately makes the decisions as to what occurs in the library. So the principal has made a decision that we're going to have an instructional assistant in the library. And so then I try not to step on toes by even myself in my own school district. I don't train those instructional assistants because they're under the direct supervision of the principal.
Okay. What is an instructional assistant?
Oh, a person who works part-time, not full-time, because of the employee laws and everything. Usually they work part-time and their job is to help with instruction of students, but not teaching them, but to help if they have questions or they don't understand an assignment. Sometimes they're aides that are assigned one-to-one with students if there's a physical disability or something like that. But then it's also it's a school title for an assistant position. So I would think it would be like a circulation clerk.
Okay.
Would not have full library training,
right?
Except for what they got on the job.
Right.
And so it would be similar to a circulation clerk,
gotcha.
who would then sometimes be expected to instruct students, though, on library knowledge. Funding. Funding is a huge issue that challenge that school libraries face. And I've got to tell you, because this is one way that we need help. Last night, one of my friends was on Facebook and posted something about how she wishes that she were able to get books about states into the hands of her students, but she didn't have the $1,000 that it was going to take, and she's in charge of 4 schools. She didn't have the $1,000 that it was going to take to be able to buy the set of books that she wanted to give to her students that she could rotate amongst the 4 schools. I said, have you contacted your public library to see what your public library could help you with in that regard? And she was like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And so she was going to contact the public library to help with that. That's one way. There are oftentimes, you'd be amazed at the number of school libraries that have no budgets at all. I mean, none. And that is really someplace where they need help. Yeah. So it might be if you have, in Indiana, we have the Young Hoosier Books, and we have the Elliott Rosewater Award for high school libraries. Make sure you have sets of those on hand so that if we're only able to purchase one set, we can send students to the public library to get more sets of books to be able to read what they want to read. That would be a huge help to school libraries. And then overall, there's a general lack of understanding about what school librarians do and what they face. I know that there's a general lack of understanding about what librarians do in general, so I get that. And that's where I think our partnership can be so strong in being advocates for one another so that we can make sure that we're helping one another. Even, something simple as what I just said, hey, contact your public library and they should be able to help you with that would be a really helpful situation.
Suzanne wants to know if it would be insulting to offer weeded materials to school libraries, especially those with no budgets.
It depends. Some schools would absolutely love that and be able to have some of those weeded books that would be really helpful to them. Other school libraries, I'm very lucky. I have a nice book budget available for my students. So I'm always weeding to make sure I have enough space for the new books that are coming in for the students. And I wouldn't be able to take them, but there are a lot of schools that have no budget that would be a great collaboration with them. If you are getting rid of multiple copies or that would definitely be worth a contact. That's a great question. And it would definitely not step on toes that would be great because there are a lot of libraries that would just love that.
Or she also suggests giving them first dibs at your books at the public library book sale. Things like that. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we can talk about, I said school librarians need your help, and we really do. We all need one another, again, with that concept of libraries being so similar to one another now that we're really morphing into supporting one another. And as Beth just said, with the you're creating a different space, that third place, and that then they're going to know that when they go into a public library, it's going to be something very familiar and comforting to them, where they may have started that out when they were young and in kindergarten. And if their school libraries are supportive of them and have a great place for them, then they'll just morph right into, as adults or teens or users, they'll become your great patrons. And I think that that's a really great way to build a patron base, is by having that start with the school library. And obviously, when kids are really young, they're visiting the public library with all of the great story times and the books. And I know I was in there constantly with my own children, so definitely. So we're going to talk now about how you can approach a school librarian, because I noticed that several things like, would it bother school librarians, or would it hurt their feelings, or would it step on their toes? And I so appreciate that people are aware of that could occur. So it does become difficult. As school librarians, we're on our own. We're by ourselves. We don't have other people to work with. We don't have other people who know our students as well as we do in terms of within the library and how the library works. So there's a few ways that we can approach this, and I've kind of put it into collaboration, partnerships, and programming, and I want to talk about each one of those just a little bit. So with collaboration, with a school library, and we talk about collaborating with teachers, what we really mean is that we want to work together hand in hand on a project with you. So that could be that, my example here is I've got my group of students who broke out of the breakout box. You can come in and work with us on creating these breakout boxes. It takes me hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to create a scenario for the breakout boxes. But if I have somebody else working on it with me, I was lucky enough actually to pull in a high school librarian in my neighboring school. That's about 7 or 8 miles away from me. And we got together and worked on a breakout for the book To Kill a Mockingbird. Because for me to do it on my own was just overwhelming. Right. But when you start working together and pulling ideas off of one another, it came together rather quickly. And so we were really surprised where normally it would take us 7 or 8 hours to create something. We created it in about 2. And so just that type of collaborative nature of having someone else to bounce ideas off of, to work together, is just huge. And school librarians and our students, we won't ever be able to leave the school really to go to the public library unless you're lucky enough to be within walking distance. Ours is a little bit further away than that, so I don't have that opportunity. But anything you do is going to need to be within the school itself. So that would be this public librarian coming into the school librarian, which would also mean that there needs to be understanding from your directors that there's, and I'm sure there is that understanding, but that they would need to allow people time to come into the library to work together on a collaborative project. So I'm going to put a question out there to you guys and just chime in if you can. What other ways do you think of that? Let me start over. What other ways can you think of that we could collaborate with one another?
Ooh, we got multiple attendees typing.
Yay!
It's always good. While they type, can I ask, so sometimes public librarians have a hard time getting in touch with their school librarian. Do you have any recommendations? Like, are there times of day that tend to be better for teacher librarians, or is there a phone better than email, or vice versa?
Okay, so I'm going to speak for me.
Sure.
But I think I do speak for other people as well. Don't call me. I can't ever get back to a phone call.
Yeah.
I've got a phone call right now sitting on my voicemail that I need to take care of. And I have been swamped from 6:45 a.m. when I get there until 4 or 5 o'clock when I leave, keeping in mind that school is out at 2:50. So, and I can't ever get back to people because I'm so busy trying to create things for the library that I don't have time to call people. So email is always great. The other thing is that, this is just common sense, I guess, but anytime you want to work with someone, anytime I want to work with one of our teachers, I always show them how I'm going to make it easier for them. Mm-hmm. So if you came to a school librarian and said, hey, I want to collaborate with you on this breakout project and I want you to do this, 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 and this, the school librarian's going to go, no, I don't have time for that. But if you say things like, here's how I can help, or here's how I could make this better, or here's how I'd like to work with you on that.
I already have this great idea.
Yes.
Can I bring it to you?
Yes. And we'd be like, oh my goodness, yes, thank you so much. That would be wonderful. And so that collaboration, now, by no means am I saying do all the work, because that's not what I mean, but bringing that preformed idea. If you just go to a librarian and say, hey, I want to collaborate with you, how do you think we should do that? We're going to go, I don't know. Yeah. But when you said, hey, could they be on your library advisory committee? I'm like, oh, awesome. Or, hey, could they give you weeded books? Yes, that's great. Mm-hmm. Those are all ways that we can work together on that. And I love the suggestions that were brought forth already.
Do you want me to read you a couple of the ideas that people
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Helping set up book clubs for teens.
Yes.
Someone else.
Love it.
See, we paid for an organizer to go to the high school, and in return they opened it up to the parents to come also.
Oh, very nice.
We do many field trips with our local schools. Students come in and tour the library to familiarize themselves with what's available at the public library.
That's great that you have the opportunity to be able to do that. And if you can get kids there into your building, wonderful. I love that concept. I used to be able to do that a little bit easier a few years ago, and field trips are kind of limited now. So I love that idea.
Yeah. Well, here's a school librarian's perspective. As a school librarian, I reached out to our public library, then stationed myself there on our e-learning days. So there was a school employee located where families might go for internet access on a day schools were closed.
That is wonderful.
Great idea.
So an e-learning day is something that Indiana has started, where if schools have snow days, closed for some sort of weather, we always have to make those days up at a later time. But with an e-learning day, we just tell the kids it's not a snow day, it's an e-learning day, and now you're going to have to do everything online. For our students who don't have access to, maybe don't have broadband services at home, going to the public library is great, because then they can get everything they need, they can get the help they need, and the school librarian posted there. It's a great way to use the resources and share the resources. I love it.
That is a great idea. I'm just going to skim through a few other ones. Suzanne used to go to her school library to give book talks. Here's another, quite a few libraries are starting to do this, and actually our third webinar, which is I believe in early December, about school and library partnerships, is going to be about this too. But here's a library who is giving students, letting them use their school IDs as their library card number.
Well,
or to access digital databases, sorry.
And I'll talk about that next.
Okay. So there's a few more great things. Everybody who's participating can read through those ideas.
Yeah, and hopefully you're able to get a lot of ideas from that. I always love to share those ideas and resources. So the next part of it is those partnerships. And the difference between the collaboration and the partnerships, the collaboration, we're really working together, hand in hand, figuring something out together and putting it forth to our patrons. With the partnerships, that student ID is a great way to remember that. All of our students in my school district, and this is my beautiful public library, I love it, the Avon, Washington Township Public Library, great staff, great director, just really, we've had some great partnerships. But one of the things that they've done is they have used the student ID numbers as their library card, and we have some additional digits in front of that, but we let the kids know what that is, and then the kids have access to all of their digital resources. So they can't actually use it to come in and get print materials, but they do use it for Overdrive, which sharing that has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Our school does have Overdrive as well. We just started a new pilot with it, but we've been able to, if we don't have it in one place, we go to the other place. Which
supplement
just
the collection.
Absolutely. So that's just exactly what I do as well. They've got additional research databases that we don't have. They have Zinio and Hoopla, and I've been able to show all of that to our students, again, through that kind of direct instruction time that I have with them, and then they've been able to see what resources the public library has available for them just by using their student ID number. And so that is a fabulous way to provide a partnership with school librarians. And I always think, again, of partnerships, like what can the public library do to benefit the students? And don't think of benefiting, the librarian, but what can we do to benefit the students? Because that's what we really do, is putting our students forth.
Right.
So again, a quick question: what do you do in terms of partnerships? So go ahead and type partnerships that you have. We've already got the student ID number from someone else. So what else is it that you do?
And I was just going to say, why don't we let them type?
Yep, that's what I was going to do. I was going to let you type, and you can read through those and hopefully get some ideas from one another, so that you'll be able to share those or glean ideas from someone else.
As Suzanne mentioned, we will capture this chat and share that with you guys too.
Great. I can't see the chat, so I'm really excited to see that. So the last thing I want to talk about in ways that school librarians could use your help is with programming. The public library has such a long history of programming and different programs that you develop and guest speakers that you bring in, and it's just amazing that resource that you have. School librarians are relatively new to that. That's something that we haven't had a lot of training on, but again, in creating that third space, we're trying to figure that out. So one of the ways we do that is with our makerspaces. Or maybe bringing in an author visit. That's probably the typical ways that we will do any kind of programming. But boy, would I love help with that. That is one way with your specific programs that you have. So you could come in over lunch periods, lunch times, and have students come in during lunches and have a program that would be going on throughout those lunch times. That could be advertised both in the public library and in the schools with that partnership. It could be that it's something done after school. It could be something done before school. It could be something started at the school library and continued at the public library for a second part of that. And this is an area where I will say that I would love help with this, and I haven't done a lot with that, and I really need to. And so that's one of the things I think about is how could we collaborate? Boy, I'd love somebody to come in and help me with the programming or do a program for me and have it running and available, and that would be fabulous. So that programming is another aspect of it. Again, with everything that we're doing, I know that you already have some programs ready to go. Just bringing those into the library would be a huge help. So that is my part of it right now. So let's finish up with any other questions or comments that people have. I know that we're nearing our time, or just a little bit. Oh, look at that. It's exactly 3:30. So I want to be aware of your time. I do want to say, in case people do have to leave, I greatly appreciate you taking your time today. I can't wait to see what's on the chat as well. But what other questions might you have? And do we want to do the last part here?
I'm going, while you guys, if anybody has questions while you're asking them, I'm going to go ahead and put the LEU form up here for you guys to download. There it is. So you just click right on that and then select download files, and you can be downloading your LEU certificates as we answer questions potentially. It looks like we have tons and tons of great ideas. Someone wants to know, would any elementary school librarians be open for public librarians coming in to do programming?
I can't see why not.
Yeah.
I think it would be great. So with schools, the only thing that you would have to do is you would have to make sure that you're following their school protocols for safety. For our school, you have to have a photo ID and you have to sign in, you have to have a name tag on. But I can't imagine that there's an elementary school that wouldn't be open to that. I think that that would be wonderful. Now, do be aware that if you have classes coming in and you're in an elementary school, you might be doing that program 5 or 6 times in a day. So just keep that in mind if you're doing that, because we do want to make sure that we see all of our kids throughout the course of the day, or set up something that would work for that school librarian in terms of the schedule. School librarians are very, very schedule heavy. A school is very schedule heavy, and we make sure we follow all the schedules. So sometimes a school or a public librarian might come in, and if you're 5 or 10 minutes late, well, we've already had to start the class and get everybody going, and that would cause problems for us. So you want to make sure that you're just aware of that schedule. Not that you would do that, but just that that we're very schedule conscious. When I have guest speakers come in and they're coming in 2 minutes before the bell rings with the kids coming in, we start to panic a little bit. But that is a great suggestion.
Yeah, I would say just try to talk to them and find out what times work for them too, because it's not quite as elementary school. They don't have as many after school opportunities, or during lunch might be a little more difficult.
Absolutely. Yes.
But talk to them and they might have some ideas.
Yes.
What if we can't get this is a technical issue. Your screen says it's not supported. You know what? I will, if you can email me, I'm going to put my email address in here right now, and I will send it to you. And I can just send that file to you. So if you're not able to access that, just email me directly and I will grab it for you. I do also have a survey for you all, an evaluation. So I'm going to put that in the chat box also. So if you have a second, go fill that out. Shouldn't take too long. Let's see if we have any other questions. Okay, I think we're done. I don't think we have a whole lot more questions. There was so much information, Robyn, so much great stuff. We could have gone on longer. So everybody, thank you for your patience with our technical issues earlier.
And thank you everyone for your time and for listening. Is it okay if we put my email address up? And if people would like to contact me, that's fine.
Do you want, I think you can just
I type in there? Yep. Okay.
So Robyn is also putting her email address up if anybody wants to. Is it working? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody wants to contact her directly. I'm going to leave this LEU certificate screen up for you guys for another minute or two, but we're going to go ahead and mute the chat or mute the microphone. So one more thanks to Robyn and thanks to you all for listening, and we'll talk to you the next time.